ॐ कर्पूरगौरं करुणावतारं संसारसारं भुजगेन्द्रहारं सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि। In this webinar session, we have what appears to be a very simple topic. From the very first class of Vedanta studies, students come to know about the requirement or the qualifications for successful completion of Vedanta studies. And among those qualifications, the foremost is Viveka, discrimination, that is, the ability to distinguish between what is eternal and what is ephemeral or passing, what is lasting and what is temporary. As Viveka Chudamani would give a definition, making a tall order, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya iti evam rupo vinischayah soyam nityanitya vastu vivekaha samudahritaha. The 20th verse of the famous Vedanta text Viveka Chudamani says, finally, to determine what is eternal, nitya, and what is ephemeral, anitya, involves intuitively recognizing that Brahman alone is satya, truth. Everything else is mithya. Brahma satyam jagan mithya iti evam rupo vinischayah. So you find the pair or the two in contrast, nitya and anitya, are tied to the other pair, satya and mithya. What is real and what is false. We shall try to take a look at Viveka as Upanishads cover it. As I began saying, though this seems to be a very elementary topic, it is actually so important that at the end of the day, whoever has Viveka has come closer to Vedanta. Whoever has no Viveka, no matter how much bookish knowledge he may have, he remains caught in samsara, caught in the world. All the Upanishads, in fact, in their own ways, touch upon Viveka, the necessity of discrimination. For that matter, even in lay contexts, in order to succeed anywhere, one of the most primary requirements is we must judge properly, we must select properly. Even in mundane matters like purchasing some fruits or vegetables, if we do not discriminate properly, then we will come home with rotten vegetables or poor quality fruits. So, Viveka is required everywhere. In fact, in the management context, I can never forget one of the beautiful sayings of Stephen Covey, the management guru. He says, if you haven't chosen your work or your goal properly, and you are only concerned with being fast and doing things efficiently, that mere efficiency will make you regret. And in that context, he uses an expression, You will, of course, climb the ladder very fast, only to realize after going to the top of the ladder, you realize then, oh, this ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. That expression, oh, this ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. This is not where I wanted to come. This is not where I wanted to reach, can be a very sad situation. Friends, the life of most people is like that. Whole life they struggle. For decades they go to work 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They pursue so many goals. They try to make so many people happy. They try to follow some X or Y. At the end of it all, as they have just a few years left, or even a few months left in their life, like the man who later said, my ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. This vast majority of humanity look back and say, we did not live a truly worthy life. For at the end of it all, rather than being happier, they are sad. They look at their childhood as happy time. Their high school days, college days were happy time. But now nobody wants me, and I myself am disgusted with myself, is very often the confession that people make. In the view of that, or in view of that, we will take a look at how the Upanishads, which otherwise are concerned with revealing the true nature of Brahman, revealing the true nature of our own existence, actually make a strong case for Viveka. Why would otherwise Lord Yama coming, while answering Nachiketa, rather than coming straight to the point that here is this truth, which, as you asked for, is beyond right and wrong, beyond the three periods of time, beyond the divisions of cause and effect, etc., rather than straight coming to a revelation of the nature of Brahman, Yama talks about Shreya and Preya. This is the most quoted mantra from the Kathopanishad, the very second Valli. That is where Yama actually begins teaching. The first Valli is the story where Nachiketa is shown to be adamant about his demand for spiritual wisdom. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada. Here, the first Valli of the six Vallis in Kathopanishad, we can't say it is Nachiketa's Vishada, but it is Nachiketa's Virakti. Nachiketa shows his Virakti, Vairagya, born of Viveka, incidentally, so firmly that Lord Yama comes around. In the second Valli itself, Sri Yamadharmaraja defines the two terms. These two terms can be very handy to all of us in countless situations. Anyat Shreyah, Anyadutaiva Preyah, Te Ubhe Nanarthe, Purushagam Sinitaha, Tayo Shreya, Adadanasya, Sadhu Bhavati, Hiyate Arthat, Yau Preyo Vrinite. Two options confront us, come before us time and again, not once, not twice, again and again. One is called Shreya, what is truly good, which may involve some discomfort, which may involve a little inconvenience, but it is the good option. The other is Preya, comfortable, pleasant, brings quick happiness, but at the end of it all, one finds one is caught. Shreya and Preya come to us, and whoever opts for Shreya, sadhu bhavati, something good comes to him. He will do well in life. Whereas those who opt for Preya, says Lord Yama, arthat hiyate, he slips and falls from his true purpose of life. Then comes the second mantra, which I especially wish to highlight, where the verbal form of Viveka is explicitly given by Lord Yama. Shreyascha preyascha manushyam etaha tau samparitya vivinakti dhiraha. Shreya and Preya come to a human being, tau samparitya, examining both the options, dhiraha, a truly wise person, courageous person, vivinakti, vivekam karoti, which is the dhatu, and with the upasarga vi plus which becomes vinakti. Seventh case, in the seventh conjugation, they call it saptama gana. So Rud becomes runadhi and so on, which becomes vinakti with vi upasarga vivinakti. The noun form of that itself is viveka. Viveka is separating. Like in English, we have an idiom, separating the grain from the chaff. So with the winnowing basket, we take grain, and when we winnow the grain, all the chaff flies off. The grain which is worthy of consumption remains with us. Likewise, vivinakti dhiraha, and dhira goes for shreya and rejects preya, whereas mandamati, mandaha is dull-witted ones. Alas, a whole lot of people on the earth, though they may be brilliant in other subjects, they may have some PhD also in some subject, but mandaha, they go for preya, for power and position, and more than anything else, quick pleasures. Quick pleasures make them do such a compromise, and they lose. So Kathopanishad, not only here, at a few other places also, and in different languages, expresses the importance of Viveka. Vivinakti, the verbal form especially, is to be noted. In the very synopsis that we sent, we showed how Kenopanishad doesn't literally talk about Viveka, but exhorts us, warns us, cautions us. This life of ours is not to be wasted. The powerful mantra goes in the second khanda of Kenopanishad of Samaveda, Iha ched avedit atha satyamasti, na ched iha avedit mahati vinashtihi. What a great loss it is! What a terrible loss it is! This entire life is spent without truly striving for self-realization. Whereas if one in a million gathers all his energy to realize his true nature, for which, in the present context, Viveka is the forerunner among qualifications. If we do not have Viveka, days are lost, weeks, months, and years are lost. At the end of it all, we find our hands are empty. We have gone old, our energies have reduced. Vruddho yati gruhitva dandam tadapi na munchati asha pindam. As Bhajagovindam says, every one of us gets old, and walking with a stick for support. We pull on, but the saddest part is because of lack of viveka, our worldly desires are not yet exhausted. Tadapina munchati asha pindam. Thirdly, to give three examples in all of Upanishads, in the Mundaka Upanishad, first anybody would get a bit confused. Mundaka Upanishad has many mantras praising karma, praising various rituals, yajna, yaga, and so on, saying tadetat satyam. All these are right, all these are true. That is what we notice in the world. People talk about moving to some city, getting some job, getting some promotion, buying that latest model of the car, and thousands of things. They never end. Buy this, go there, get this, become that, and how wonderful it would be, and so on. All this media and even the Bollywood, Hollywood, etc. All of you have seen in recent times some short videos doing the rounds in WhatsApp and so on. The heroes and heroines of yesteryears of the 70s or even 80s, how they look old. They have lost all their charm. At one time, they were the heartthrob of millions of people. They were sought after for an autograph. They were sought after for advertisements. They were role models for people, young people. But today, many of them, you can't even recognize them. And some of them have moved out, moved to the next world also. And yet, how strange that generation after generation again gets deluded for karma, that is, work hard, make money, this is the time, and grab that opportunity, seize this chance, and ensure that you get promoted, not the other guy, and all this talk. Just like that, in the Vedic context, you have karma. And having praised karma, if you patiently study Mundaka Upanishad further, you will find the Upanishad coming to a later clarification. With all this glory, not only what you enjoy on the earth in this life, but also after this life you enjoy heaven. Mundaka Upanishad talks about somebody going to heaven, being received with great love and regard and honor by the devatas there. But after all that, the punchline is found in uh, the first Mundaka, second Khanda. There is a punchline. Plavahi ete adridaha. These boats on which you travel, it's a figurative expression for karma. They are not firm. They look very attractive at a time, but you have to examine. Plavahi ete adridaha yajnarupaha ashtadashoktamavaram yeshu karma etachreyo ye abhinandanti moodaha jara mrityum te punarevapiyanti. Again and again they come back, they are born, they get old, they fall sick. Punareva. That again reminds us of another popular shloka of the Bhaja Govindam. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. The ancient seers of our land had deeply examined life, and their drishti was so far reaching. So not only in this mantra which I have quoted, but later on also in the more famous mantra, you have Parikshya Lokan Karmachitan Brahmano Nirvedamaya. Please see, Nirveda is a reference to Vairagya. But That mantra itself begins with Parikshya. Parikshya is a reference to Viveka. It is through the exercise of Viveka that we can come upon Vairagya. By imitating some Virakta, if we also say, yeah, tomorrow onwards I don't want any pleasure or position, that's not going to happen. So we have to do Viveka. Viveka is our Purushartha. Vairagya in that sense is a product, if not a side product. Viveka is what we must exercise moment to moment, not in a post-mortem manner, not later on. As a mystic once said, the future is now. Generally, we say, one of these days I will be very careful. As Eknath Ishwaran would say, that one of these days becomes none of these days. We go on postponing. Therefore, we better listen to the mystic whom I mentioned first. The future is now. Next time you and I think of doing the right thing on another day, we must tell ourselves that another day is this day. Today is that another day. We better do now itself. As I examined the Upanishadic literature for more light on Viveka, I did find many other mantras spread over practically all the Upanishads. But to my delight, I found that no one does as excellent job on this Viveka as Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita also at many places, but especially if you look at the 18th chapter, you may say the word Viveka may not be very much there in the 18th chapter. Don't cling to a single word. Go for the teaching. As far as the teaching, as far as that message is concerned, what Sri Krishna describes in the 18th chapter as tamasic kinds, tamasic tyaga, tamasic karma, tamasic jnana, tamasic karta, tamasic buddhi, tamasic sukha. He again and again takes satvika kind, rajasika kind, tamasika kind. And in fact, rajasika kind also has quite a bit of aviveka, absence of viveka. But in the tamasic kind, in the description thereof, you find ample light thrown on what is lack of viveka. Of course, you are right if you say sattva shows presence of viveka. Yeah, sattva is presence of viveka, rajas is poor viveka, and tamas is aviveka. Let me give you a couple of examples. In the 18th chapter, the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 7th verse has the pointer to a kind of renunciation, kind of tyaga, that is the Sanskrit word, and which is not true tyaga. Niyatasya tu sannyasah karmanah nopapadyate mohatasya parityagah tamasah parikirtitah. Many a time somebody says, I have quit, I have given up, I am no more working, I discharged or I passed on responsibility to somebody and so on. And upon examination, you find it was not out of spirit of renunciation, it was out of moha, delusion. Moha tasya parityaga. Deep inside, the person is very attached to it. But outwardly, the person says, I am quitting. Just by imitation or because of some passing influence. Swami Akhandananda Ji Maharaj mentioned once somewhere a humorous scenario. A young man because he attended some satsangs and so on, decided to give up and walk away. But his father understood this young man doesn't really have vairagya, but this is a passing influence, like Smashana Vairagya, they say. And in that humorous story, one particular day when the mother of that young boy was very concerned, will our son leave home and become a sannyasi? The father says, those who take sannyas do it in a different way. The mother and the son look at the father and see him, look at him with wonder. What do you mean? Those who truly renounce, in what way do they do? The father takes a towel which was hung on the wall and puts it on his shoulder and says, those who truly renounce walk away like this. And he walks out of the home. The mother and the son are looking at him. 5 minutes are over. The father doesn't come back. Then they get a little alarmed. And the story ends saying that father never returned. Now, I'm not saying anybody should do that. They don't imitate anybody after listening to a story. The point is, the father who just walked away in the story gives this message that when there is true ripeness, there is no vacillation, there is no oscillation. One just does it. Whereas when one is not ripe, one is actually lacking in viveka, but wants to live a life of vairagya. When there is no viveka, the foundation, and there is a desire to have the fragrance of vairagya in one's life, it fails. The son, suppose, had gone, would have come back after a few days, or would have ended up in some other complication wherever he would have followed his teacher. So the father, who had deeply thought over things, walks away. So I'll not go into all the details, but if you see in chapter 18, for example, the next one is karma. In the case of karma, you have 25th verse. I'm at random taking examples. 25th verse says, when somebody is into activity out of personal ambition and not caring for how others could be hurt in the process, that is called tamasa karma. No sensitivity. See, when there is no viveka, it's not just about some high stuff. Even in our day-to-day activities, when we don't have viveka, we end up hurting a lot of people. Many a time we are not aware also that we are hurting people. That is the terrible scenario. Then an excellent description of lack of viveka is found in description of a tamasika karta. Some words are so easy to understand here. When we have no viveka in daily life, we do things the way it is described here. Ayuktaha, prakritaha, stabdaha, shataha, naishkritikaha, alasaha, vishadi, dirghasutri cha karta tamasa uchyate. I take this shloka as a wonderful elaboration on absence of viveka. Ayukta, disintegrated personality. Prakritaha, lacking in refinement. Stabdaha, highly egoistic. Shataha, very wicked in his ways. Naishkratikaha, damaging even others' lives. And lazy. And often, after all this, is he happy? No. Sad, depressed, dejected, and doing things too slowly and so on. Friends, all this is when there is no viveka. Viveka is the most precious jewel that we could possess in our life. Now, I quoted a few things from Upanishads. I quoted a few things with regard to Aviveka in Gita, while already I said, you want to see examples of Viveka, see the corresponding verses in the context of Sattva. Sattvika Karta, Sattvika Karma, Sattvika Jnana, and Sattvika Tyaga, Sattvika Sukha, Sattvika Buddhi, Sattvika Jnanam, and so on. Lastly, to give you another sample of how Viveka is so much emphasized, I go to one of the top-notch works of Advaita Vedanta. As you know, among the Prasthanatraya, the hard and difficult work is Brahma Sutras. And on Brahma Sutras, Adi Shankara wrote what is called Shariraka Bhashya. In that commentary called Shariraka Bhashya, the very first introductory portion is also considered an all-time classic, that is called Adhyasa Bhashya. There also, the very first paragraph, Viveka is mentioned. Sri Shankaracharya says, the fundamental problem of a jiva, a human being who is philosophically called a jivatma, the fundamental problem is erroneous perception. That is called adhyasa. That itself is avidya. That erroneous perception, adhyasa, how does it happen? Why does it happen? He uses the word, let me read that particular sentence. Anyonya dharman adhyasya. Why does he do so? Itaretara avivekena. When there is no viveka, when there is no clear distinguishing between what we are and what we are not, the ego rises. The ego comes to the center stage. The ego gathers all strength and makes us suffer endlessly. Viveka removes the ego. Aviveka makes the ego prosper. Itaretara avivekena. Itaretara is mutual, that is in both ways, in both directions, between the Atma and Anatma, the sentient and the insentient, and so on. Atyanta viviktayoho dharma dharminoho avivekena. There is then false knowledge, mithya jnana. Then aham idam, this is me, mama idam. All this vyavahara begins. Therefore, for students at their early stage and for spiritual seekers who have deliberated on the Vedanta a lot also, to learn to live in Viveka 24/7, anywhere and everywhere, not to give room for Aviveka is of paramount importance. So in this simple webinar, we will pause here saying this quality, this attribute, this guna or this arhata, yogyata, a dimension of fitness of viveka is to be borne in mind, is to be understood, and you and I should gather the sampatti called viveka more than any other sampatti. The viveka, the wealth called viveka, is of greatest value to us. Om Namah Shivaya. Please feel free to make some comments or ask some questions and so on. Let me see here. Okay, I begin with a question by Hero Advani. Oh, that is, has it started? Or has the webinar started? And one other person also asked, Hari Om, has it started? There was some technical difficulty with the internet and it started 5 minutes late today. Now, Narendra Paul asks a question. How to put Viveka in practice in our work where we have to execute targets and make people to work? How to balance fine line? Yes, in workplace, there are two kinds of Viveka. That is, one is Viveka with respect to the objective details of the work. What requires to be done first, that has to be done first. What may be done later has to be done later. The time management and so on. Lot of Viveka is required. Lot of people at workplace fail because they lose all their time attending to unimportant things. So as management gurus like Stephen Covey would advise, be concerned with the second quadrant tasks. The four quadrants are well known in the management circles. The four quadrants are made out of things that are neither urgent nor important, things that are important but not urgent, things that are urgent but not important, and things that are both important and urgent. So take importance and urgency and make four combinations. And management science says if we have the viveka, we reflect, we to look at the tasks, and we day in and day out we need to do that. Many of us don't do it, therefore we continue to suffer. If we examine and find, oh my god, all my time is going in firefighting, all my time is going in doing things which are always urgent. Why am I not able to either stop these urgent things coming up again and again, or set in motion some procedure, some people to handle that? My time should be for things that are important but not urgent. That is the second quadrant. So one is the viveka with regard to management of time and other resources. Another is from a spiritual point of view. People at work have to again and again see whether they are hurting human beings. Hurting meaning being unfair, exploiting, or not giving to somebody his or her due. So if we are not exercising viveka, we might be successful in one sense, but at what cost? We have come up at the expense of maybe many other people. So viveka applies in the field of work, both in context of resources like money, time, machines, etc., and handling human relationships. So the way to develop it is pause and proceed. Don't live mechanically. Take some time off. Other day, someone wrote to me, I think I rarely visit that site, LinkedIn. Once in a while, I look in there what is going on. Somebody was full of appreciation of that gentleman called Elon Musk. Elon Musk, is the industrialist businessman, entrepreneur who created the electric car Tesla and who has plans to send a private satellite to some Mars or somewhere. So, yeah, great. He has got a lot of projects. He's a very famous man. About him, it was written that he sometimes takes 6 months off. He is hardly into anything. He gives all tasks to other people to manage. 6 months he is deliberating on something really profound, something really solid project. He works on it. There's other extreme, a lot of us who every day get lost in so many small things, urgent things. So that's what I can share with you. Katyayani says, Swamiji, can you name a few steps to help the loved one to use that discretion from tamasic karma to rajasika to start with? Thank you. Oh, the question is how to help a loved one. That means not ourselves. There is somebody whom we love. So to make that loved one, develop discretion. Yeah, one of the things is if we are really concerned with somebody who is your loved one, maybe young one, who for whom you care a lot, you can't just sermonize. If you give them some sermons, this is what you should do, okay? they won't listen. So the only way is, whether you like it or not, communication, periodic communication, and listening to their point of view, rather than just snubbing it and saying that is wrong, that's where you have gone wrong, etc. Then you rub against the wrong side of those people. So it is, there's another beautiful word, have more and more sensible dialogue with that person, the loved one. And then once that person, through these dialogues, through this communication, realizes, number one, you mean well, number two, you have really some real point, that person will come around. Subramaniam says, being worldly wise versus Viveka, your comment. Being worldly wise without violating dharma is perfectly all right. We are in the world, so we have to be worldly wise to an extent. But in the name of being worldly wise, in the name of being smart, in the name of being street smart, if we play with dharma, that is like playing with fire. So even how even great famous people are in jails, or they are hiding in some other country and so on. In India, in recent times, there were several top-notch businessmen, Vijay Mallya or Nirav Modi or some Mehul Choksi, or how many? There's a number of them. And they are all hiding somewhere. And the international police is trying to get them and then get them to India. Because they played with fire. They played with dharma. They thought they were worldly wise. In olden days also, so many on and off. In your United States, you had that Enron scandal some 2 decades ago. And there was this Satyam Computers scandal in India. I'm giving some business examples, but it doesn't have to be in business only. Everywhere, even in ashrams and spiritual organizations, somebody who plays with the laws of dharma gets severely punished. As Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayananji would say, sometimes a man may not be punished for his sins. That means no organization, no government does anything, somehow escapes from their hands. But Swamiji was very witty. A man is not punished for his sins. A man is punished by his sins. By violating dharma in the name of being a smart and clever guy, the person actually damages his own inner psyche, his own inner balance, his own lovability, as well as ability to love. Because a mind which is inwardly split, consciousness that is split personality, showing one thing to others but being something else inside, that mind will not be at peace. So whether the police or the long hand of law catches him or not, this guy will suffer. Therefore, I will sum up my answer saying, Viveka and being worldly wise to manage our duties to that extent, not to outsmart people and make some quick buck, etc. So, worldly wise within the framework of dharma, they go hand in hand, no problem. Moment you try to overstep dharma, then Viveka also will leave you, will disappear. Okay. So thank you, says Narendra Paul. Juhi Bose has a question. Behavior and attitude assessment is the main thing in a person, which determines his or her genuineness. Do Upanishads address this? As Viveka is also about the same. Oh yes. See, Upanishads are not as explicit and simple as Bhagavad Gita is. Upanishads are a bit subtle. Here and there they do have gross statements, but otherwise they concern themselves with finer things. Now, as far as behavior is concerned, in all the Upanishads we do have some stories, some characters. For example, the way the senior wife of Yadnavalkya behaves, Maitreyi, that is a behavioral description. She could have just rested content with the huge property she got when Yadnavalkya says he's leaving them and going. But Maitreyi says, I want to ask you, you are leaving all this property to Katyayani and me. Maitreyi and Katyayani were his two wives. What makes you go? And do you say we will be happy here? So she engages him and he gets so delighted. So Nachiketa's example, again behavior. Behavior means, some conduct in thought, word and deed, especially word and deed. Thought, we don't know what thought is going on in somebody's mind. But when he speaks and when he does something, that is called behavior. So we have numerous examples, especially if you study Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I have myself recently begun a little bit of study of that. Brihadaranyaka, it's a huge Upanishad. There are 100 characters whose behavior gives us a lot of lessons. Yadnavalkya and Janaka and Gargi and Maitreyi and Ashwapati or Indra, Virochana, Sanaka Sanandana, Narada, Prajapati, all sir, so many characters, so many stories, and interspersed into the story are profound teachings. Upanishads do address, but we'll have to do some homework on that. Ramayana and Mahabharata put stories first and spiritual teachings second. In Upanishads, spiritual teachings are above, stories are given on the background. Priya Natarajan says, does Viveka mean tolerance to all? No. Viveka has nothing to do with tolerance. Viveka is seeing the truth as truth and the false and false. Viveka is, I place before you a few things and you separate them. What are genuine, what are false. Viveka is an inspection job. You inspect. You may have a pad of currency notes and you have some special machine or whatever. You inspect and find out that some of them are fake notes. In banks you have some machines which check. Fake notes are separated out, or the cashier has been trained. Some of the notes he holds against light, and then he knows this won't move. So, about our words and actions, if we examine, we find some of them are genuine, some of them are pretense, some of them are a show, some of them are with the foul smell of hypocrisy. So, to distinguish hypocrisy from honesty is Viveka. It's not about tolerance. Rather, it is intolerance. You intolerate, that is, you don't tolerate, hypocritical behavior. Let me see whether I missed. Vijayalakshmi had a question. We also tend to develop a sense of guilt due to our Viveka. How do we deal with this feeling? I don't think because of Viveka we feel guilty. The guilt may be something else. When we are exercising Viveka and call a spade, that is, somebody is doing wrong and we say, and then he cries. Then maybe being emotional, we may feel bad. I tell my son about something where he is wrong. Now he is so depressed. Then I feel, oh my God, I should not have hurt him so much. That is a sentimental side. Then I should learn to tell my son next time in a way which goes well with him. Maybe I was harsh, or I was too loud, or I showed him his fault in front of some friends and so on. Then the repercussion is when he went into some kind of reaction, or maybe he started drinking or smoking because the father is often unkind. Then I feel guilty. I am responsible for his taking to drinking or smoking. So otherwise, Viveka actually helps everybody. There should not be any guilt. This is how I look at it. There is a question here. It is not ignorance, but ignorance of ignorance is death of reason. Oh, I don't understand this ignorance of ignorance. I'm not sure what it is. Chris Chilupuri, it seems the study of secular subjects also develops Viveka. Oh yeah. Leading to Vairagya. Physics, maths are often pure. No. There I disagree. But partly I agree. Physics, maths, etc. in a general way give you tools of reasoning. Tools, they train you of in the matter of being sharp. But the criteria are totally different in spirituality, in philosophy, in moral life. In physics, maybe it is about weight, as you have length and mass and time and speed and velocity and acceleration. There are so many parameters. With respect to those parameters, you have been trained. Which is faster, which is slower, which is accelerating, which is decelerating. But here, who is speaking truth, who is telling a lie, who is pretending, who is genuine? And when am I tempted to a wrong pleasure? And when am I okay? So these are parameters are different, but some common ground may be there. Something like not knowing what we don't know. That's all right. Now let me see whether somebody has raised a hand and wants to ask a question vocally. Yes, Katyayani Surya Devara had raised a hand. Your mic is on, Katyayani ji.
Yeah,
Would you like to speak up?
Yes.
Namaste.
Namaste. First of all, happy birthday, Swamiji. Many happy returns
Thank you.
of the day. And we need guides like you to think us in the right direction and to lead us in the right direction. And another thing is, I wanted to correct myself. It was me who wrote that it's not ignorance, but ignorance of ignorance is death of reason. As a connection to my question that you have already answered. That's because a lot of people, they don't even know that they don't know. A lot of us, I mean, that includes me, a lot of times, a lot of things we don't even know that we don't know. So that's what makes us totally ignorant. And that's why I asked how to move from that tamasika to rajasika, and you already answered the question to help the loved ones. So I just wanted to correct myself. Thank you.
And by the way, just now it made sense also to me. When I read it, it makes sense. Ignorance, that is not knowing that one is ignorant.
Yeah, right, it's not right. Ignorance, but ignorance of ignorance is that's what happens. A lot of times we don't know that we don't know. So that's the thing. Yeah. Thank you so much.
We know. So, okay, looks like we need. Oh, yet you already said. Ravi Prakash. Ravi Prakash has a question. Viveka and consciousness. How are they related? Oh, Viveka is a faculty or a dimension of the buddhi. Our buddhi, intellect, or you may even use the word here intelligence. This intelligence may have viveka, or it may be lacking in viveka. Whereas consciousness is the illumining light. Consciousness illumines a bad thought as well as a good thought. Consciousness illumines a thought rising in viveka or a thought rising in aviveka. So, viveka is the ability to discriminate. With more education, not only bookish education, I should say not only book education, books all have a place, Shastra has a place, but learning from real life situations, improves our viveka. Consciousness, the pure consciousness, like, as I said, is the light that illumines. It is not a particular dimension of buddhi. And then there is another use of the word consciousness. That's overall psyche, human psyche. It's called human consciousness. So please be clear about viveka, then the rest of it will fall in place. Viveka is just that ability to judge properly, so that right action, right step we take and wrong step we avoid. A lot of people take the wrong step not realizing that they are taking the wrong step. And then Sri Ram, is it past karma that determines how much viveka we are born with, and then it has to be cultivated? Definitely. Our past karma would have generated vasanas in us, and those vasanas cloud our viveka. So those of us whose past karmas were more meritorious, as a result have less vasanas, will be able to, distinguish the truth from the false more easily. Think, for example, two boys join, let us say, an engineering college. One of them had been living a very, sensual life, watching movies, going to restaurants, always hanging out with friends and so on. That is his past karma within one life. The other one was not like that. He did see some movies, he did go to restaurant once in a while, but always work is first. So when they try to study, let's say, engineering, parents are far away, these people are in hostel and they're studying. The one with that karma, lot of pleasure seeking, will find it very hard to study properly, because the restaurants, the cinema theaters, other places of enjoyment in the town where he has joined for engineering will be tempting. That will cloud his vision. That will make it difficult for him to, he may even bunk some classes and go and see a movie. His heart will say, no, no, I must see this movie. No question about missing it and so on. So past karma means vasanas. That is our baggage. Many of us have a lot of vasanas. Those vasanas come in the way of viveka. Therefore, we have to. So next question also related to that, Gayatri TR. Is viveka hereditary? Yeah, like the earlier question went to an extent. Oh, hereditary means from parents and so on. Oh, sorry. You see, our Shastras do not touch upon heredity so much. Every jiva brings his own karma from past life. But the law of karma ensures that the karma you bring from your past life matches to a great extent with you, who are your parents in this life, who are your brothers and sisters in this life, and so on. So quite a bit of matching is done. My favorite example is, if you have learned some skills, the job you get will sort of match with your skills. The job you get matches with the skills you have. Likewise, the karma that you have done in your past life matches with the parents to whom you are born as their son or daughter. Heredity is incidental. Karma is the primary one in our Hindu philosophy. So Meera Rao says, things are seldom black or white. So it appears to be. To develop true viveka is really tough. All of us are in the same boat with you. We all have that difficulty. Therefore, to develop viveka, we have to go slow and spare some time for more education, more upasana, and so on. That's true. So therefore, we should not go with this mad world and just be doing things that others are doing, imitation, etc. It's very difficult. You are right. Things are seldom black and white or black or white. They're gray. For example, when some pleasure prospect is over there, part of our mind says it is just pleasure, let me not go for it. But other part says, no, it's not just pleasure, but somebody has invited me for that party with so much love, I cannot say no, I must go attend. So an obligation, a sense of duty gets mixed up with the vasana for enjoying the party, eat and drink and make merry and so on. So one has to distinguish. But if one has done some upasana, if one has done some puja, japa, karma and so on, then if it is duty, one goes to the party but doesn't drink much, doesn't eat much, moderately. So we need to prepare our mind to discover avenues out of getting more and more caught. I think that's about it. Did we miss anyone? Vibhaji is able to see.
You have done, Swamiji. All are done. Krishji wanted to ask first. His hands were raised, but again, then he asked the text questions. That's all.
Yeah. The last question was so true. Viveka is not easy, but we can definitely move from less Viveka to more Viveka. Last year's errors we can probably try to avoid this year, having learned sometimes the hard way. But it's very difficult. They get mixed up. Pleasure and duty get mixed up. We think it is duty, but it may be pleasure. Some other time we think it's pleasure, it may be our duty. Yes. Thank you all. Om Namah Shivaya.
Pranam, Swamiji.
Hari Om.